Well, I've been explaining to people, and you know this, for literally years, a whole new set of rules was coming, a new paradigm. We are seeing a massive shift in demographics, or elimination of an entire class of people. I mean, it's just all happening, and it's happening very rapidly. And I find this extremely disturbing. I mean, look, people like you and I and some other people have been able to foretell that these things would happen just by looking at the way things were playing out. But it's getting pretty extreme right now. And the lies, the propaganda, the distractions from the mainstream propaganda ministries is just hitting a fever pitch. You know, we're doing great. It's fantastic. Everything couldn't possibly be better. That's what they're trying to convince us of. And I've been saying, look around you, people. Does it jive with you? Are you buying what they're trying to sell you? Absolutely not. Look, the world today is in dire shape. We have a global economy that is shrinking at its fastest pace in history. An admission right here in the United States that our economy is shrinking. It's astonishing to me that they allowed that to leak out. Despite what we're hearing from the Federal Reserve, from our politicians, how great everything is and where our economy is growing at a moderate pace. That's been the Federal Reserve's, kind of like war cry for years. Meanwhile, what have they done? They've continued to keep rates suppressed, artificially inflating in the debt bubble beyond our wildest dreams here, creating price action distortions across the spectrum of asset classes. None of this is by accident at all. Missing their own target with regard to inflation by exponents. It was supposed to believe that's by some kind of accident here. You got to be kidding me. A mechanism that's going to be kept in place as they sell the lie that by raising the federal funds rate, this is going to miraculously cool inflation. No, all they're doing is assuring that more inflation is going to come while we go from this crisis to crisis to crisis economic model now. It seems like the new norm. Find a reason, as you and I have well known, to pull cash from the future and exploit it to the highest possible order so they can pull cash out of the future, throw cash at it, trillions of dollars. COVID, this war, an energy crisis, a cost of living crisis, food shortages, food crisis, and it's just not going to stop. And all of this is going to require that people, no matter what they actually may believe, they have to stand behind it. They must support it, billions and tens of billions of dollars to pay for more wars around the world, expanding wars. This main war between Russia and Ukraine, which they are going to continue to drag on for as long as they possibly can. People, again, look, I really hope people are waking up. Unfortunately, I think most of them are asleep. And the big distraction right now, look what they're doing. They're throwing out this whole big Roe v. Wade thing. This is another method to divide people, to keep them distracted. Look over here. So expect something very big to be going on in the background while they pull this off, where they got everyone up in arms here. You see all the pictures across the mainstream channels. People in each other's faces screaming as loud as they can. They can't focus on anything other than, this is another crisis, obviously, that they're throwing at us here. And it's a mechanism, again, to keep you looking over here while they pull something off over there. Crazy stuff.
There's three things that you just covered I wanted to circle back with you on. One was this idea of we're not being told the truth. We haven't been told the truth for a long time about the economy, about a lot of things. But meanwhile, we'll be prevented from speaking the truth. There's the new Ministry of Truth that just got established here in the past week. Before we go on, your thoughts about that, about the ability for us to speak the truth in the face of lies?
Well, what are they doing already? How many people do we both personally know that have gotten shut down? You're not allowed to do it. I am shocked that you and I are still out here. It's astonishing to me. Beautiful. I guess we might have friends somewhere that we don't know about. I'm surprised that we're still here. I've been telling people for years, I believe they're probably going to, target me and other people who are trying to get this stuff out there. Maybe I have no idea what's going on with that. But thankfully, we still have a platform. Every day I get up and I look to see if my channel is still here. And every day it still is. I have a big newsletter out there that I don't think they can touch through Substack. It's free. I ask people to subscribe to that. So in the event that my channel gets shut down, at least I can get some information out to these people via, maybe not videos, but at least I can write down what's happening. I have no idea, but we need to find another way, and as a backup, just in case they take us down. I'm shocked that we're not gone already, really.
Another thing that you touched on a few minutes ago was about this idea of official actions being taken by those in the charge of our financial edifice or monetary controls, and then saying that, oh, we didn't realize, how you said, did they really miss their inflation target? Was that really unintentional? That really surprised them? Like, why are we not shocked? And yet the people who are at the helm seem to be acting shocked. We had a statement that came out about the surprise unintended consequences of government spending from the IMF. You recall about, half a year ago or so, Christine Lagarde and others from the IMF were saying, spend as much as you can and then spend more. This was even a year ago, for exhorting governments around the world globally to overspend beyond their limits in order to prevent a financial implosion because of the COVID lockdowns and all that. So first of all, we're going to lock down the entire world economy and then be surprised that it happened, that there were consequences, financial consequences of that, and then tell countries, spend beyond your means to get us out of this unexpected surprise consequences of locking down the whole world. And now they're saying they're surprised that it's having inflationary impacts. And meanwhile, they're blaming the inflation on, the conflict, the geopolitical conflict, or whatever the thing of the day. Can you talk to us about this never-ending shock and surprise on the part of officialdom when those of us in the cheaper seats are going, you didn't see that coming? I mean, you've got your famous duh response to those things, but what's your sober take on these unending surprises that keep happening?
Well, look, I think that's the mechanism here. It does take most people by surprise because they have no idea what's going on. People don't follow this stuff. People, unfortunately, people look towards any leader at all. And this is a phenomenon that goes back to time immemorial here, no matter what they are, no matter what causes they might support here, dark, light, or indifferent. People want to be led, whether it's into the slaughter or into some kind of salvation or whatever it might be. So people are easily strung along. And as this message is propagated through the propaganda ministries here, people sit there and they buy it all. I mean, I'm sure, like me, I talk to people every day about this kind of stuff, and they have no idea what's going on. They don't understand how the system works. They don't even realize what they're looking at, that we are going from crisis to crisis to crisis, and the whole mechanism behind it. They don't even understand the basic model that we have with regard to our financial system, that it's debt-based and it requires more cash to be pulled out of the future in greater and greater amounts every single day. They don't understand that. So if they don't understand how, at its core, how the system works, then they're oblivious to anything. Look, this stuff isn't taught in school. You got to look at this stuff yourself. Imagine they taught people this stuff in school, how it has to work, how the mechanisms must be kept in place to continue to borrow, and they will use any mechanism to do that. I've been telling people to be ready for anything. That's why this war or anything else they're going to throw, but it should be no surprise. They're going to continue to do that, and they're going to do even more because the system demands that an ever-increasing amount of cash be pulled out of the future, and nothing more so, none more so than war. They used disease. They shut down the global economy, like you said. Stock market still went higher with the economy shut down. With this war now, a lot of fear here. But I've been telling people for years that they will kill millions, tens of millions, to keep this system going, the debt-based economic model. And what better way to do it than to propagate wars, to fund wars, weapons, all of this stuff. So they really have the world where they want it. Look what else is going on here. Governments around the world, arms deals like we can't believe, military budgets ballooning. All of it. It's all part of the same mechanism. Are they going to bring us the world to a war? Well, if they have to support, and all it will be is to support the system, to keep it going here. It's not going to die. What's going to happen is people are going to die by epic amounts, millions, tens of millions, like I've been telling people for years. And then the real grand finale is going to be the debt market implosion and a resource problem that is going to unfold that way. The bubble will burst in the debt market. That's going to create issues like you can't believe. The whole financial system is going to melt down, lock up. A credit freeze will occur. There's going to be pandemonium in the streets. And what are they going to do? We have a solution for you, everyone. I know how bad everything is. So we, the world leaders, we've come together and we have a solution. And people are going to be on their knees begging for that solution. And all it's going to be is something else angled against them as people gain power. That's all this is.
Yeah, and what we've seen in the past is that solution is presented like the day after the crisis, and it's 2,000 pages long, and nobody's actually read it, and they have to pass it so they can see what's in it. And more recently, it's global in nature, so therefore, sovereign states and countries have to give up their rights of their own people in order to go along with this vital global initiative.
And the people have no say. I mean, they must get behind the funding of any amount. 10 billion here, 15 billion here, 30 billion over here. Yeah, you have to support this, because if you don't, then you don't care about the people in the Ukraine or the people over here or this disease and people that you must support it. They've really got the world by the throat here. And people are oblivious to it. They don't know what's going on. But it's so clear to me, and I am sure you, as well as the people that follow our work, I mean, they get it.
Alex Newman from the New American talks about this as weaponizing our empathy against us. It's the dark side of what you always promote. The light side of was every Friday you end your broadcast with saying, love each other, care about each other, be charitable to each other. We ought to take care of each other, that sort of thing. So that's part of how we're made. We're made to care not only about ourselves and our families, but about our communities and about everyone, frankly. But that can be just twisted just enough to get us to go along with just about anything. We seem to be very gullible when we're being told, oh, it's unpatriotic if you don't do this, or oh, it's against your common man, or you're a hater, or you're a granny killer, or you're a whatever if you don't, if you act like a hoarder instead of, just go ahead and basically sacrifice your future and the future of your country, your freedom, your constitutional rights, everything for this cause that we're going to tell you is a greater cause. That was the third thing that you mentioned earlier in your introduction, which was this never-ending series of crises, and there seems to be two main payoffs for this never-ending series of crises that I think you've touched on both of them. One is specifically this ability to justify and gobble up obscene amounts of debt creation, which is pulling prosperity from the future into the present just to keep us barely alive here in the present, and dooming our children and grandchildren to a very bleak financial future and loss of freedom and privacy and everything in the future. The second of which is avoiding all accountability for the mess that was just made. So these crimes against humanity, and you've talked about some pretty serious ones, major loss of life, that sort of thing, crimes against humanity, violation of the Nuremberg Code, on and on. A violation of the Constitution, et cetera. We can't talk about that right now. We got to talk about the thing of the day, the new thing of the day. Can you touch on those two? One is the necessity of always pulling greater and greater amounts of our future into the present, which dooms us to our future. And the second being this avoiding of accountability.
Well, absolutely. That's the mechanism of the beast. I've been telling people since day one. It can't stop. The debt is going to continue to balloon. Debts and deficits are going to explode by design until this all ends. This is all leading into a climax where a whole new thing is going to come here. We already have a one world government run by the central banks. They are stringing the world along with them. Everything we're seeing right now has been planned out decades ago. We're just living in the side effect of it. There's nothing that's happening in the now. It's all been preordained and pre-planned here. And there's no way out. They already have all the pawns in place. They're stringing the people along via the mainstream outlets here. It's an incredible situation. And people are being turned into slaves, nation slaves, individual slaves, like I've been telling them for years. Personal debt, household debt, everything's exploding. The currency is losing its value. Food banks getting overflowed. They can't keep up with the demand here. Real wages are gone. They're deeply in the negative as inflation continues to surge with no end in sight here. And yes, who's being held to accountable? Who's being held to account? Nobody. I've been asking that question for the longest time. When are we going to hold anyone to account? And look, the central banks are the root cause of everything we're seeing. They are the ones pulling the strings. They are the puppet masters. Henceforth, why there are central banks around the world, they have a stranglehold on us all, and they're going to continue to work in concert to propagate their end game. Their end game is to own the world. It sounds like a science fiction movie, is to own us all, to create everyone, individual slaves, nation slaves, like I've been telling them, to be the lenders and buyers of last resort. This is what they want, and they got it. They're there now, and there's no way to stop it. It can't be done. We would need divine intervention for this to stop, because there's so few of people like you and I, the people that follow our work, that really understand what's going on. It is so diabolic. It's just so twisted. And if people think they've seen it all, they haven't seen anything yet, honestly.
Yeah, we have a precedent for this scenario, and that is in the Bible, where we talk about Joseph, son of Jacob, who interpreted Pharaoh's dream about 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, and they stored up so much grain that, as they say, the whole world came to Egypt then during the famine. And first they gave them their money till they didn't have any money left. Then they gave them their land till they didn't have any land left. Then they gave them they sold themselves. They sold themselves into indentured servitude and slavery. So when you talk about the owning everything, we have a precedent for that.
That's what's going on.
There's a question here from Aaron Razy, who says, when the debt market collapses, as you will state many times, do we liquidate our stocks? Will we be able to get the cash if everyone is running for the exits? What should we do when the debt market collapse occurs? And maybe you'll talk about what we should do before it happens.
Well, like I've been telling people, take advantage of everything that comes your way. I am not a one-trick pony. I am diversified into many, many, many assets. And it's not just stocks. It's not just precious metals or cryptocurrencies. I own musical instruments. I own real estate. I own artwork. Look, I talk about things from a financial standpoint here, but really, if this whole thing turns out to be a worst case scenario, and that's really what it looks like it's going to be, what is all this really going to matter anyway? What have I told people since forever? We are our greatest resource. All this is just the game. You want to play the game, that's fine. The game involving the stock market, derivatives, precious metals, cryptocurrencies, artwork, real estate, fancy cars, blah, 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 Rolex watches, all that. That's all well and good. But what good is all this going to do when the whole system changes? I mean, yes, there's going to be a lot of cash to be made here if you're on the right side of this entire thing. And with getting your money out of the market, it's always, look, it's always the smart money that gets out the door first, and most people get left holding the bag. That's really the truth. But this is what you must be at the same time, in my view, in risk-on assets, meaning equities, taking advantage of things until we see the debt market implosion. And we can see that easily, in my view. You're going to see a rapid rising of that 10-year yield. And I mean rapid, not just a slow. What we're seeing now in the debt market is the market itself pricing in rate hikes, which are coming. We had, I was telling everyone we were going to see the 10-year yield settle above 2, which it did. Then all of a sudden the Fed's like, okay, we're going to be aggressive now. We're going to go 50 basis points. And then now you see the market readjusting and now we're going to get an over 3%. We touched over 3% on the 10-year yesterday. If in fact the Fed were to remain in that stance, we would see the 10-year yield rise higher. I think they're going to take a break. I think we're going to get a 50 basis point hike this week. And as for the next one, we'll see. If they do another 50 or 25, I think they're going to back off a little bit because the mechanism is going to remain in place. Anyway, just going back to what we were talking about. So look, we're trying to get your cash out of this market or cash out of an ATM or anything else. You're going to be in the same boat. There's going to be a credit freeze. That's what this is leading up to. There's going to be no cash in the banks that's available to get. It's not there anyway. You go to the ATM, you can't use it. You can't use your credit card, can't use your debit card. So we're on the same boat. That's why we need to look for other things as well. You need a survival plan for a worst case scenario. And that includes, number one, getting together with like-minded people in your community, establishing relationships with your neighbors. Look what they're doing. They're dividing us yet again through this leaked Roe v. Wade thing. It's so obvious to me what they are doing. They are trying again to divide and conquer. Hate this guy because of this reason, hate that person because of that reason. We got to stop. We have to stop letting them play us like puppets. And that's what they've done. They've turned us all into puppets. So just going back, look, we need the bigger plan is, yeah, sure, Greg Mannarino is trying to keep everyone on the right side of this market. Am I right all the time? Nope. Is anyone right all the time? Absolutely not. It's an impossibility. But I put this out to the best of my ability. And I think my record is very, very good. But we need to look beyond that. We need to start looking at, all kinds of things, like a survival mechanism, like I was talking about, making relationships, caring about each other, taking maybe, some of the words of some of the greatest people who have ever lived here, and to love each other, care about each other, be charitable to each other. But look what's going on. People are becoming more divided, I think. It's very hard. People don't want to do that. They've become so indoctrinated into and programmed by the programs on TV that they don't care. No one cares anymore about nothing. And it's really a sad state of affairs. And that's why we are where we are today, pretty much.
And I just wanted to recall that over the years that I've known you, which is many, you've always advocated, even though you say keep a foot in the capital markets to be able to make profits and pull those profits out, that you don't leave all your nest eggs in there. That's what you were just talking about, being diversified into real, tangible things.
You have to.
So that, because the questioner almost implied that situation of how do we get our cash out of the capital markets at a time if they all lock up, and it's like
you can't keep it all in. And no, I tell everyone, you cannot be in any one asset, in my view. You got to be somewhat diversified. You must have hard assets, okay? Silver's my favorite asset of all time. I have it all over my desk. I just like to look at it and touch it and play with it. You got to just look at everything. And but like again, in a worst case scenario, what's all this going to mean anyway? You could have piles of stuff laying around. If you don't, what we're talking about, like, you can't eat gold, you can't eat silver. I'd love to have it, but there's going to be a massive increase in that from understanding how this is going to play out as cash bleeds out of the debt market. When we get that implosion, rates will spike, a lot of pressure on the stock market, which is going to sell off in an epic way. I mean, there's no doubt that the biggest crash ever is coming in the stock market. Who knows? We can have an 80% sell-off with regard to the S&P 500. It's very, very possible. And all that cash is not going to grow little cash wings and fly away to money heaven. It's just going to move. It's going to move into commodities, into real things. That's how I see this playing out. I also believe the market cap of cryptos is going to balloon. So you need exposure to lots of different things with regard to, understanding how this is going to play out from a financial standpoint, but it goes beyond financial. That's why I leave off every Friday with the same things. That's the most important thing. This is all lovely. To me, I love the game. I really do. I get up every morning and I say, okay, how is this playing out here? Looking at the stock market. It's almost like a video game, moving cash over here, taking it from over here. It's not even real. It doesn't exist. It's all digits anyway. It's literally like playing a video game. So that I love. I love that whole part of it. And at the same time, understanding that you must be betting against the debt, becoming your own central bank, getting prepared for the movement of cash. I do not care really about the day-to-day movement of the market. I don't even really think about it anymore. I used to be more of a day trader, swing trader. Totally don't do that anymore. I'm in the market here owning large cap dividend paying stocks. Some of them have done not so well. Some of them have done very well. But I trade around these positions now by becoming a net seller of options onto the market. Generally, I sell puts, 20% out of the market expiring like in a month. So I'm pulling what's called premium. I get paid up front, pull premium out of the market. That's it. It's a lot less risky than what I was doing before for a very long time. And it's a young man's game, and I'm not that young anymore. I'm 56, so believe me, I feel it in my body and everything else. But we got to look at the bigger picture. We got to sit back here and say what's really important. Is it really all this other nonsense, big houses and swimming pools and Ferraris and Maseratis and Porsches and what, or is it bigger than that? In my view, it's way bigger than that.
Along the line of people who are at least trying to position themselves, besides being in some tangible assets, they're also trying to keep some powder dry, as Rick Rule has talked about, maintain liquidity. You've talked about having the high ground, etc. Mark Capelli asks, during a, quote, stock market crash, what usually recovers more quickly, gold or silver mining stocks? I have a watch list of mid and large cap stocks that I'll be buying at the market crash. I'm hoping to utilize profits from the mining stocks to purchase my watch list stocks and also holding cash. Thank you for all your outstanding videos. Thank you for keeping us informed.
Well, I generally don't talk about things that I don't own. I do not own miners. I just would rather hold these things. That's how I play that part of the market. I'm not saying that there's no value there. There is value. There's no doubt about it. I just don't own it. And I think at one point when we do get that market crash that everyone is believing, at least understands is going to happen, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to get in there. The market, in my view, is going to overcorrect. It always does. The one thing about the market you can always count on is an overreaction, either to the upside or to the downside. It always works that way. And being able to recognize those overreactions is what makes it interesting and what makes it, I wouldn't say easy, but easier maybe to capitalize on it, because the market just doesn't make these mechanical moves. The market is emotional, and the market is driven by people's emotions. So you always get these overcorrections. So I do believe we're going to get an absolute meltdown here in the stock market. It's going to be on a biblical scale. People aren't even going to believe how low the S&P 500, I always refer to the S&P because it's the broader market, is going to go. And then there's going to be a lot of opportunity down there, in my view, because these companies have value. All right. They have people working for them. These are real things. So, and I'm not talking about the derivatives here. I'm talking about owning actual stock in these companies, owning a piece of it, having voting rights if you own a common stock, or if you want to own preferred stock. There's all kinds of different things. You lose your voting right, but you get other benefits out of it. But look, my job, or what I do for people and myself, is try to look for where opportunity lies. This market today is in a technical correction. It's been that way for just about 4 months. The high in the S&P was, I think, early January. Since that time, the S&P 500 has lost 13%, just about off its high. And there are people out here freaking out that we're in some kind of a market crash, and we are not in a market crash whatsoever. Look up the definition of a technical correction. That's all this is. Yes, the NASDAQ is in a bear market, but again, we're looking at the S&P 500 here. The NASDAQ is under pressure because it's very interest rate sensitive. And once the market adjusts to that, I think it's going to turn around. I really, really do. The crash is going to occur in the debt market first. It's not the stock market where they're trying to get you to look and stay panicked about. It's not the stock market. It's the debt market. The debt market is the driver. So once you understand that, everything else should become clear to people. Watch the 10-year yield. You can look at the whole yield curve, absolutely, and worry about inversions and this, that, and the other thing. But for me, it's the 10-year yield. It's the benchmark, and that's where everyone should have their eyes focused. And they're going to know when the real problem starts, when we see bang, bang, 3%. 3.25%, 5%, 4%, but rapidly, not a smooth slope as the Fed is raising rates, but very rapid. I mean, probably within days, you would see going from a 3% to a 4% or higher. And who knows where it can go? Because look, trying to put a real value on debt, no one can do it. It's been artificially inflated and ballooned beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and it's not going to stop either. The Federal Reserve continues to hyper balloon the money supply. Meanwhile, they want to stop inflation, right? Their asset purchases have not stopped. They're continuing to buy assets, mortgage-backed securities, doing a lot of talk, doing nothing. Go to the Fed's own website. Look at the charts. It's hidden in plain sight. Anyway, but that's my take on everything. I'm not worried. I never worry. I never rattle. Once people get worried and rattle and get scared, they're going to make a bad decision. And that can't happen.
I'm going to ask you to open up one more layer of what you were just talking about. Dry Code asks, what exactly is the debt market and how does it relate to the 10-year yield? You keep mentioning the debt market and how we should always be looking there first.
The debt market, well, let's look at assets in general. Okay, when you're looking at things at face value, let's talk about the 10-year yield. Why do I always look at the 10-year yield again? Because it's the benchmark. That is where mortgages get priced off of and everything else. Now, the 10-year yield being the key here, I tell everyone, 10-year yield is the key. Watch the debt market. This right now, who owns it? Well, it's central banks. They're buying it all. They've been buying it all. Who in their right mind today, an investor, for example, would want to hold a bond for 10 years or 30 years that's paying them nothing, 2%, whatever it is, whatever the coupon might be? You got to be insane. That's with a market that has gone virtually straight up. Literally up until January, since Donald Trump took office, it just went straight the freak up. And now people are getting all up in arms because this market has fallen in 13% regard to the S&P 500 in 4 months. Are you serious? The debt market is the largest aspect of this market by exponents. And included in the debt market would be, well, if you understand, the currency. The currency itself is a unit of debt. The debt market is in the multiple quadrillions. Now, if you're just looking at it at face value, it's still in an epic sum. But you have to understand that every asset, whether it's a unit of debt or anything else, has derivatives connected to it, layers of them. And this is where this gets into the astronomical phase. No one knows how big that is. It's impossible to calculate how big the derivative market is. And I'm not just talking about debt derivatives or dollar derivatives. I'm talking about stock derivatives and everything else. What is a derivative? Something that derives value from something else. It's so big, it's so monstrous how the system works. And that's, I think, why people have a hard time getting their head around it, and then understanding that people are just looking at it at face value. When you look at the U.S. debt, whatever it is now, 23-4 trillion, you're looking at face value. If people understood the layers of derivatives that are underneath that itself is probably in the quadrillions. It's just alone. And there's no way to pay it back. It's never meant to be paid back. It's meant to be inflated on. And that's what they're going to continue to do. All the talk about everything else is just nonsense. They can't allow people to understand that they can't stop. It must continually be fueled. The moment they stop, $1 is all it would take to bring down the Federal Reserve. If we were to prevent the Fed from issuing $1 single dollar, one of more debt, the entire system, the Federal Reserve, goes away. It implodes. Henceforth, why? Crisis, war, COVID, disease, whatever it might be, must be created. They can't stop it. And they must borrow in greater and greater amounts just to sustain where we are. It's not static. It must forever be increased. And the side effect of that is seeing what's happening to the global population. They're being slaughtered in wars. They're being crushed on the mountains of debt. They can't survive. It's completely out of control. We're seeing, again, the 1 and 2 percenters get very, very rich, very more wealthy as everyone else just loses. I've been telling everyone for years, the middle class is being erased. They're being deliberately pushed down to the lower rung of society. That's where they want everyone so they can be controlled. That's why they're eliminating the entire middle class. The upper echelon of society is getting richer and richer and richer and richer and richer. And they're the ones out here spending and doing everything else while the middle class is being systematically exterminated. And that's really the truth.
Greg, you've been a voice for alerting people to what's really going on in the face of all this misdirection for a long time. And you're consistently standing out there trying to bring more and more people with you out of their sort of sleepwalking that's so commonplace these days, and really waking up and looking at things straight on, and deciding how they're going to take care of business for their families and for their communities. If people want to stay connected with your work, where should they get connected?
Go to my website. You can find me on YouTube. Just Google me or whatever search engine you might use. People can find me. And I urge people to subscribe to my newsletter in case I get removed from YouTube or anywhere else. I will keep in touch with people through that, and it's free. Right on my website, traderschoice.net. You can join I got like 60,000 people there. I'd like to see that number balloon a lot more. But please take advantage of these things. And we need to come together. We got to stop letting them